Hey, Erik, welcome to Nuance Soma. Thank you so much for being here. So today I would love to explore this wild, wild west of mushrooms for a consumer who is in the market looking for, let's say, cognition support or focus or clarity. Often, they're drawn to products that might have lion's mane in there. But there's such a plethora of products and mushroom options out there, functional mushroom options. It would be great to sort of demystify this world of mushrooms and break that apart. And today I have Erik Puro from Kääpä Biotech. They are the leaders when it comes to the functional mushroom space. And when I was creating products for Nuance Soma, particularly Second Cup, and I was looking for a credible, scientifically backed, proven, standardized extract, it was really difficult for me to find that. And Erik and his team are really leading the industry in that regard. And today Erik is here to sort of break down the science behind what makes the Kääpä Biotech products and hence, what's in Nuance Soma in Second Cup different from various other brands that you can find in the market, what truly matters when it comes to choices within mushrooms, and how consumers can make better informed choices. So let's get started. So in this sort of world of mushrooms and functional mushrooms, Erik, would you mind just starting with talking about functional mushrooms versus mushrooms themselves? Like what is the big difference there?
Yeah. Thanks, Anu, for inviting me to be here today as well. I think it's just a pleasure to talk about mushrooms, anytime possible. And I think when we talk about mushrooms versus functional mushrooms, I think it's a great place to start. When you think about culinary mushrooms in general, you can think about lion's mane, right? You can eat that.
Yes.
You can buy it in the store. Shiitake
Yes.
mushroom, button mushroom comes to mind. And the way that, let's say, mushrooms maybe you find in the forest or you find in the supermarket, there's a different set of criteria that those are grown for, or strains that are picked for those, versus when we're looking at medicine, right? So just like when we think about apples, there's like 100 different apple tree varieties that we know of. Some are really good for baking. They're tart, right? They have a bitterness to them. You want that, in your apple pie. And then maybe there's big, nice, juicy gala apples that you want to eat when you just take a bite out of it. It's crunchy and it's sweet. So we always look to, when we're from an ag tech standpoint, we're always looking to, what are those key criteria that we want to enhance or develop based on a consumer preference. So if you are looking to, vitalize energy, increase focus, increase short-term memory from a product like lion's mane, you want to look at the total hericene and hericenone content, right? You don't care so much how much water is in that product. Mm-hmm. You don't care so much the fiber content. You're not looking at protein levels. You're not looking at fat levels. So, when you're looking at, like, our company for 7 years, we've been doing a lot of R&D on how do we A/B test our growing technology for lion's mane so that we can enhance those compounds that we know are really effective at nerve growth factor release or brain-derived neurotrophic factor stimulation, neurogenesis, neuroplasticity, not so much, the water side. And the result of it is, if you look at, if you test lion's mane you find in the supermarket, the lion's mane that we grow might look roughly the same, but it's at least 10 times higher in those key bioactives.
So really, it's the concentration of the bioactives like hericenones and hericenes, which actually have the physiological function that support things like cognition and short-term memory, etc. Therein lies the difference, basically, the concentration. And that's really, actually, that segues into another question I have is how do you ensure these levels of concentration? Obviously, because we've done some research on trying to understand what the best ingredient out there was, you have something called Nord-release technology, which from my understanding is your proprietary technology that is very different from what we might see in other places, which might be cooking in the pressure cooker or, hot water or what have you. Would you mind explaining to us a little bit more about this technology and what impact that has in terms of the bioactives that people can find in your lion's mane ingredient, as an example.
Yeah. So, 5-6 years ago, we started asking those questions, right? So like what we noticed in the market was that, people were, a lot of ingredient suppliers for functional mushrooms, a lot of brands were really discussing about the beta glucan and polysaccharide levels. And, beta glucans are a subset of the polysaccharides. They're kind of an interesting compound in mushrooms, 30 years of clinical evidence, incredibly good at immune adaptogenicity. It's helping support, the immune system getting more active or getting less active, depending on your body's situation. Incredible compounds, but that's not why people take lion's mane, right? So, people are taking lion's mane for that focus, for that brain support, for that cognition support. So there's a totally different set of compounds and criteria that are needed to look at, like we talked about the hericenes, hericenones, right? So when we started, we said, okay, great, let's go to Eurofins, let's go to one of the big labs, let's just test our material and find out how many of those bioactives we have. But they don't offer those assays. So we as a company actually had to spend 18 months developing with a pharmaceutical lab actual assays to test for these different bioactives because it didn't exist in the market. And so now our company, of course, we're getting AOAC approval, which is like we're setting the global standards for how to test for these different bioactives, and of course we're releasing that publicly. So now any company out there can test for those bioactives thanks to the R&D work that we did, and that has been allowing us then to really ensure that how we grow them has higher levels. But then we guarantee to you and to any brand we work with and to the end customer that this is our minimum level of these compounds in the product. So you actually know if you're holding a product like Second Cup, right, that there is like an effective dose in that product of those main compounds. And I'd say that's one of the biggest benefits that we've given, right, to the space. But it also goes on to, you can have all those bioactives in the raw material, in the mushroom, but if you don't extract it, basically it goes right through you. So if you were to grow amazing lion's mane, right, and you grind it into a powder and you put it in a product like Second Cup and you drink it down, we know 95% of those bioactives just flush right through your stomach, large, small intestine, and leave your body, never transfer through the intestinal wall, get into the bloodstream and actually do anything. So the extraction technology is critical. And so that's why we developed, we looked at the industry and we said, okay, in the EU, UK, the only approved extraction technology for mushrooms is water extraction. We know this is about like 5% bioavailability. So we said, okay, that's really not sufficient for a proper, nutraceutical product. We looked at developing our own. We spent many years doing it, and we went ahead and got EU, like safety approvals on that process to ensure that we weren't making something that would be potentially damaging, to our health, because that's not the intention. And we got approvals last year, right? So what we do is with this Nord release is we can get over 92% bioavailability in the final product. So
92% versus the 5% in the market.
Yeah, incredibly effective product.
Okay. And what does that mean? So there are brands out there that talk about, you've touched upon so many things, right? So you've touched upon the importance of actually growing the right mushrooms with the right amount of bioactives in there. And does that process matter? Just to sort of break it down, how it's grown. Does that matter?
Massively. Yeah.
Okay.
I think, not to go into the details so much, but like how you harvest the mushroom, what strain you use, the humidity levels, the temperature that you're maintaining, the oxygen exchange, the CO2 levels in the room, the different light wavelengths that you're using. All these have massive impacts on that mushroom's ability to create these compounds. And depending on the substrate that it's living and growing on, those can have big impacts. So if there's, a fantastic substrate mix, there might be lots and lots of fat and protein that the mushroom can make. But I don't care about fat. Your customers don't care about fat and protein when they're drinking that cup of coffee. They want to have a cognition impact. So everything we have to do has to think about, okay, what is the impact on hericenes, hericenones for lion's mane specifically? And then, how do we make sure that those get into the body? So it's those two things, everything in our R&D, everything in our product development, everyone at lunch break in our company, that's what we talk about. How do we improve that process? And then at the end, it doesn't matter so much if on paper all this makes sense. So we have done human clinical validation. So, we published basically a really important acute study last year in a peer-reviewed journal. So really good science, double-blind randomized controlled placebo study, where we looked at the impact of our lion's mane extract 1 or 2 hours after you take it, right? And we put it against caffeine, because at the end of the day, who cares about none of your customers take a glass of second cup and they go, oh, I'm so happy there's lion's mane in it. What they want is they want to have an effect.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So we don't care that there's lion's mane. We don't care that there's caffeine. We don't care that there's coffee. What we want is have an effect. We have a need. We're going into the afternoon. We ate too much carbs for lunch. The boss bought like a spaghetti dinner.
Yes.
And we have all these meetings and we got to manage, and what we looked at is, okay, most people grab a cup of coffee, and what could they grab? Let's find out. Let's do 2 control groups. Let's do a total placebo group, and let's do also a caffeine group, and let's do a lion's mane group. And we knew we'd beat the placebo. That was totally fine, but we also beat the caffeine group, right? So in terms of improving cognition, improving short-term memory, decreasing depression symptoms, and increasing a general sense of well-being and mood, those 4 criteria, lion's mane won. So if we think about, do we want to have that nervous system jitters? Is that a fun thing? Does anyone go, I would love to have a little bit of jitters right now. I'd love to just, be a little bit anxious in my head. That would be a great feeling. No one says that. What you want is a clean energy. You want just like a clean way of thinking. When you start to think of an idea, it just comes. Memory is just there, and everything in our brain is just working properly. That's why I shaved my head, by the way, just to make it all the heat.
Too much thinking now.
Yes,
it's permeating out.
It dissipate faster. Yeah. But I think lion's mane is incredibly effective. And the cool thing about lion's mane is, if you look at, let's say, the impact of caffeine, right? So we talked about it being a nervous system stimulant. You have all those, gut issues from that. You have all the, the cognition issues from that as well. And then, of course, the crash afterwards. But for lion's mane,
being affected.
Yeah. Sleep, everything. And for lion's mane, I mean, the side effect is basically that you make more brain cells, right? Because it's the mechanism is neurogenesis. You're actually increasing neurons in your brain. And we're doing a chronic study right now in the US. It's about 3 months. It's like a 50-person control. And we'll be publishing hopefully in December, latest Q1 of next year. And so that's going to be a really exciting landmark study to look at what is the effect if you take consistently over 3 months. That every day you're really helping to build that neurogenesis. Do we see a gradual increase of cognition? Do we see performance increases from our brains? And the preliminary data says yes, 100%. And that's what we see in mice, we see in rats, we see in angelfish. So I think, overall, it's lion's mane is a huge promise, and it's delivering on that promise.
And who does it serve? Like, what kind of customer does it serve? I mean, I would say everybody, because who doesn't want better brain cells and, better ability to think? But is there, I'm in my 40s right now. There are women in perimenopause. There's, I don't know, kids with ADHD. Like, who can it serve?
Yeah. So I have an ADHD 9-year-old. I have my wife is in perimenopause. She's not 40 yet, but almost. And then, of course, I have parents with cognitive decline. And I would say this is a product that can help all those groups. I mean, me as a person, I do everything from podcasts like this or interviews like this. I also go twice a year and I speak in Spain to the public healthcare system, where Kääpä products have been integrated for now 3 or 4 years in public practitioners' practices for patients with Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's. And we're seeing, them getting better, them getting out of care homes, going back to living with their families, improving their life in that way. So I think but to me, you got to start now. I think cognitive decline starts around age 30. Our brain cells start to decline. NGF levels, nerve growth factor, hormone levels go down, brain trophic factors levels go down.
Yes.
The point is not to wait till we're there. And I think the younger generation gets it. I mean, the younger generation, they're not drinking alcohol like we did, when we were, I don't know, I'm just assuming about you. But
we all did, because that education wasn't there. And,
we didn't know.
like you and I, we were not talking about things.
No, never.
And the kind of research when it comes to ingredient science wasn't quite there either.
No.
So it's all sort of coming together now. But that is incredibly promising in the sense that, you know, there's something here that's bigger than the ingredient itself, right? It's serving people in a larger way, live better lives, you know, have more of a kind of active brain function, which is so important. Once you start going into that decline, you're not the person that you were. And any kind, I think, of just, you know, suboptimal sort of brain capacity really impedes how you feel, how you function, how you interact with your loved ones. It is so hard. And it's really promising to see that it's not just touching on things such as, you know, longer term nerve growth factor and all of that, but also things like depression and mood, which is so prevalent every day.
Yeah, we know that depression is highly correlated with cognitive decline, right? So, I mean, I think it just, you know, as we get older, we're all going to be at risk of higher levels of depression, you know, and I think it's not about this. We're not trying to run marathons anymore. Maybe we're not trying to, you know, it's about just enjoying every day. It's about waking up and having a great time. And I think if you're barely getting by the day by shooting coffee and just overloading your nervous system, you're basically stealing time away from yourself. You're adding cortisol levels to your body. You're increasing your stress. You're increasing your base load level stress, and you're sacrificing, you know, your end health for something for today. And that's something that we don't have to do. Like, we don't have to do that. We have the tools to enjoy like a cleaner and better and reverse these kind of negative aging consequences.
Completely. And from a consumer point of view, though, you know, this is fantastic. And now they're going, oh my God, I want this lion's mane because it's going to help me, you know, in so many ways. But then again, it is a wild, wild west out there, and there's all kinds of lion's mane.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about where consumers can go wrong today in terms of choosing the product, and how do they choose the right product?
Yeah. Well, this is like a 2-hour long conversation.
I know, but to summarize some of the big areas, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, there was a really two landmark studies that were published. There's one in Italy called, you can find it if you Google, like, Let's Open Pandora's Box, Italian mushroom study, where they looked at the 20 top products on Amazon in Italy. And Italy is, if you're not sure, it's like the largest food supplement market in Europe. I mean, it's just people there really, it's very good brands, very high levels of trust, mature market. And they looked at the top 20 sold mushroom products. And out of those top, 18, but out of those top 18, it was only 6 that had the correct DNA that the label said. So we're so far in the same in the US, 75% of the reishi that was tested, top iHerb and Amazon sales, wasn't the correct DNA either. You know, and we're so far away from like what we're talking about here, this, like, you know, human clinical evidence, standardized bioactives, you know, high levels of trust and transparency in supply chain. We're so far from that in most of the mushroom discussion. If you're buying a lion's mane product, is it even lion's mane? How do you even know that? How was identification done? Is there HPLC, you know, fingerprinting or DNA fingerprinting to show that the product is even lion's mane? Not if the lion's mane was grown with high levels of bioactives, and what levels are those, and is it extracted properly so that those actually get into your bloodstream? Is there any human clinical evidence? Not even all that stuff. Just, is it even the product it says it is? Yes. So I, you know, from an industry and from a customer awareness standpoint, you know, I think I think the companies that will be doing very well are companies that can meet that expectation from a customer. That's not, I want to take lion's mane, but I actually need help. The afternoon's coming and I don't have a way to kind of get my energy levels back up again. My hormones are not regulated for many, many, many reasons, like we talked earlier a bit. Mm-hmm. And I need to get some energy in the afternoon. So, okay, does it work or not? And then all that stuff doesn't matter, right? It's like, is it the right DNA? Is it the right bioactives? All that stuff is just ways to build trust. But at the end, the trust is there. Do you feel a difference or not? Is it helping you or not? And if you find something that's helping you, then all that stuff is working properly. You know, all the back end side of things is working.
But is there something that consumers should be looking for as they are, you know, evaluating between one product versus another?
I think consumers, we have a great white paper that our company just released called Measuring What Matters.
Yeah.
And it's looking at like, what are those key bioactives in, let's say, 11 different species that we work with as a company? What are those key bioactives and what are they responsible for in the mushrooms, right? So like, the idea is kind of, other than beta glucans, what should we be looking at? So like, we get a very calming and restful and, anxiety decreasing effect from reishi. Well, what are the compounds inside that do that? And I think at minimum, you should be looking for products that have those levels on the product. And you should ask for, a COA. Where were those products properly tested in a lab? And do they have a COA to prove that what's on the label is actually what was in that batch? And I think at minimum, that's the, consumer diligence that should be done.
You talked about, so you did, your paper, which is Measuring What Matters, talked a lot about beta glucans as well and why it's important. And you touched upon this earlier in the talk. Why is it important to look beyond beta glucans? Because there are a lot of companies that talk about beta glucan numbers and 40% beta glucans and so on and so forth. Do those numbers matter? What actually matters?
I mean, I think it's, so there's an incredible study. So a lot of people look at, so beta glucans equals immunity. We have 30 years of research on that. They cross the blood-brain barrier. They interact with cytokines, killer T cells, macrophage. They really help autophagy. They really help support a lot of the immune function in our bodies. If there's long-term inflammation, it kicks your immune system up to deal with that, like cancer. If there is something like, too much overaction, like autoimmune, it calms your immune system down. So the beta glucans are incredible, but those are going to exist because they're a building block of the mushroom. So if you're taking a product like, our lion's mane, there's going to be massive amounts of beta glucans as well, right? It's always going to be there. But I think if you look at a really interesting study that was done in Norway, looked at a couple of years of cancer patients there, where they were giving traditional oncology, plus one group had traditional oncology treatment, chemotherapy, all this stuff, plus chaga. And they had a higher survivability rate with the chaga group, right? And chaga is actually 90% tree. So it's 90% plant. It's only 10% fungus. So it's not really a plant or a fungus, something in the middle. And so chaga, only because it's only maximum about 10%, fungus, maximum can have like 8%, 9% beta glucans, really. So what's happening there? It's not this immune support and this inflation support is not from the beta glucans. So in chaga's case, it's actually enotodiol, butylenic acid, these really high level, powerful antioxidant compounds that are increasing stem cell regeneration, so repairing your body after chemo, repairing your body through that process, and then improving mitochondrial function in the cell. So making your body just work like it should. So when we look at across the board, the biggest impact that these different, if it's chaga, if it's reishi, if it's lion's mane, if it's turkey tail, if it's whatever, it's almost always a bioactive that's more interesting than beta glucans, almost always. So I think nothing wrong with beta glucans, super great. And that's a wonderful side effect. You're going to take lion's mane, it's going to help you with cognition, you're going to feel great in the afternoon, and your immune system is going to be improved, right? So great.
Yeah.
I think that we, if we went to align as respectful brands, as respectful educators, if we are out there selling a product as lion's mane for cognition benefits and saying it's standardized to beta glucans, there's a cognitive dissonance in that discussion because beta glucans are not helping with cognition, they're helping with immune. So if you're saying this product's going to help you with immunity because we have 40% beta glucans or 60% beta glucans, or we're a 10-to-1 extract or whatever, none of that matters. What is the total hericenes, hericenones, and what's your human clinical evidence that shows that it's actually effective? If you don't have that, all this is just
noise and immunity stuff that's not correlating to the key benefit.
No. So if you want to make an immunity product, great. Then find out what it is, including beta glucans and other ones. Yes, standardize to those, make that really clear to the consumer, educate that really, really, really well. But if you're going to make a reishi product for sleep, or a chaga product for anti-aging or longevity, or lion's mane for cognition, it's the other compounds that are really responsible for that.
So what you're really saying is, look, if you're looking at lion's mane and cognition, don't look at beta glucans by itself. That has an immunity benefit, but look at the bioactives such as hericenes and hericenones.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think this is really, really helpful.
Yeah, of course.
I think the work that you're doing, even just in speaking to you is incredible, because it's really about touching lives and touching health in such a fundamental way. And my own journey into this started with a cancer diagnosis and surgery and all of that. And so for me, ensuring that product integrity and that scientific integrity is met is crucial, because ultimately, as you said, it's not about the ingredient, it's about how the person feels. And what is how are we improving, helping them live a better life through health. So thank you so very much.